My name was Amina. I was a daughter of the faith, a devout Muslim in a village where silence and tradition ruled. At 32, I played my part well, obedient, reverent, wrapped in the fabric of a devotion that cloaked my heart. Yet inside, I felt a haunting emptiness. I prayed fervently, but my soul whispered doubts that echoed louder than any call to prayer. Then came the darkness, an accident that shattered everything I thought I understood. In those fleeting moments, as my body lay still, I slipped into the void. And there, amid the shadows, a blinding light pierced my soul. It was him. Jesus spoke my name, revealing truths I had never dared to confront. I saw the spiritual battle raging on unseen fronts, an unseen war that had ensnared my very spirit within a web of fear and control. Returning to my life, I was met with harsh betrayal. The rejection sliced deeper than any blade. My family, once my sanctuary, now branded me a heretic. I was lost in a sea of guilt and isolation, but even so, the seeds of a divine calling began to bloom within me. I could no longer silence the truth that burned like fire in my heart. In secret, I sought answers, turning the pages of the Bible, listening to the echoes of others who had traversed this treacherous path. Each testimony resonated with my spirit, offering me a glimpse of the peace I craved but had never known. Yet in that search, fear clung to me like a shadow. The fear of losing everything I had ever known, including my family and my place in the world. But I realized my experience was not merely for my own healing. It was divine purpose leading me to share the truth and herald a rebellion against the silence that had held me captive for so long. With each step toward my new reality, I would have to be bold, even if it cost me dearly, even my life. So, before we dive deeper into this powerful journey of transformation, I invite you to share in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I long to connect with you across this vast expanse. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. What lies ahead may not just change your day, it could change your entire life. Welcome to the truth that sets you free. In the tightly knit village I grew up in, traditions ran deep, shaping every aspect of our lives. The Islamic principles taught from a young age, ingrained in my mind, dictated not just my beliefs, but my very identity. My days revolved around rituals that felt more like obligations than expressions of faith. Fear of community ostracism loomed large. Dissent or deviation from the prescribed norms would invite judgment and isolation. Familial honor was paramount, and I felt the heavy weight of expectation on my shoulders, anchoring me to a life that, inside, felt increasingly hollow. I often caught a glimpse of happiness in the eyes of those around me, but it eluded my grasp, buried beneath layers of guilt and obligation. Then, my life took a sudden turn when I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The news delivered like a death sentence shattered my already fragile world. As a daughter, a friend, and a member of this community, I was supposed to embrace my fate with patience. Yet inside me brewed a tempest of fear and despair. The illness stripped away my strength and rendered me vulnerable, forcing me to confront the existential questions I had suppressed for so long. Lying in the sterile confines of the hospital, helpless and afraid, I felt trapped in a narrative that no longer made sense. Could this illness be a test, or was it merely the cruel whim of fate? Amidst the turmoil, something extraordinary happened. During a medical crisis, I slipped into a coma, and in that state, I experienced what felt like a near-death experience. In that profound silence, a blinding light enveloped me, and I found myself standing before Jesus. His presence radiated love and hope in a way that I had never felt before, transcending the confines of language and belief. He called me by name, Amina, and with those words, my entire being ignited with understanding. This was no coincidence. I had been led here for a reason. The revelation I received unveiled the hidden truths about the spiritual war that raged within and outside of me. In that moment, Jesus illuminated the realities of my world, the manipulations of those in power, the elite enforcing their hidden agenda to maintain control over the masses. I saw the deception that had kept so many shackled in fear, pitting communities against one another in a struggle for power and dominance. The visions were overwhelming, showing me the ways in which society had been forced into division rather than unity. Those who were supposed to guide us, the leaders of faith and politics, were often lost in their own webs of control. I began to grasp the gravity of the situation. I realized that my illness was a symptom of this greater illness afflicting humanity, a call to awaken from the slumber of ignorance. Emerging from my coma, the truth was both a gift and a burden. I woke with a renewed sense of purpose, but the fear of how this revelation would affect my life hung heavily in the air. I was acutely aware of the spiritual war that lay ahead. I felt overwhelmingly compelled to share my story, to awaken others to the truth I had discovered. Yet, the shadows of doubt seeped in. What if my community rejected me? What if my family couldn't understand this transformation that I had embraced? The urge to hide from my newfound faith battled against the desire to step boldly into this calling. Each moment of clarity I experienced felt like a blessing, yet it also served as a constant reminder of what was at stake. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges, but my heart was set on a path of awakening, not only for myself, but for others who were still trapped in the cycles of deception. I envisioned a light piercing through the darkness, illuminating a way for friends and family to find their own truth. I was determined to contort love and compassion into every encounter, letting my testimony serve as a catalyst for those longing to break free from the confines of fear and oppression. The challenges ahead loomed large, but I would not shy away. It was time to share the truth, to confront the realities of this spiritual war, and inspire others to embark on their journeys toward awakening, whatever the cost. I've always been seen as a devout woman, the daughter of a respected imam, fulfilling my community's expectations. I wore my faith like a cloak, embodying the obedience and piety that were celebrated around me. Yet, beneath that carefully crafted exterior, there was a growing unrest within my spirit. I felt an intense longing for something deeper, something that transcended the rituals and routines of daily life. My heart ached for an authenticity I struggled to find in the confines of tradition. Every prayer felt like a whisper lost in the void, and my soul was left heavy with a sense of emptiness I could not shake. This internal struggle became even more pronounced when I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The diagnosis struck like a thief in the night, shattering my world and the delicate balance I had maintained. I sat in the doctor's office, numb with disbelief, as they provided me with the harsh prognosis. In that moment, everything shifted. I began to confront the reality of my existence, the realization that life was fleeting. I observed my faith fraying at the edges, a desperate struggle taking root in the silence of my prayers. My spirit was torn between the teachings I had held dear and an overwhelming longing for a deeper connection that seemed just out of reach. As I lay in the hospital bed, pain tearing through me like a storm, I experienced something extraordinary. During a medical crisis, I slipped into a near-death experience. In that moment, I found myself enveloped in a brilliant light, a warmth that washed over me, erasing the fear and pain I had grown to know. There stood Jesus, his presence radiating love and comfort. He called my name, Amina, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being seen and understood, as if the very essence of all my struggles was laid bare before him. In that sacred space, He revealed truths that shattered the illusions I had carried for so long. He unveiled the hidden agenda of the elite, elucidating how those in power thrive on division and hopelessness, creating a web of deception that kept countless souls trapped in despair. I witnessed the chaos in the world, the wars fought in the name of power, and the suffering inflicted upon the innocent. The revelation struck me with unimaginable force. It became evident that this was not merely my journey, but a part of a larger spiritual war, a fight for the awakening of humanity. I recognized that my illness had been a pivotal moment, a painful yet transformative experience meant to propel me into this battle for truth. Returning to consciousness was both a blessing and a curse. I was filled with a newfound clarity, yet the weight of my experiences bore down on me like a heavy mantle. I had seen and understood truths that were hard to digest, and I felt an urgent call to share this revelation with others still lost in darkness. With each day, I grew more determined to break free from my past and step into the light of my awakening. Yet, amid the joy and urgency, I couldn't shake the fear of how my family would react to this new chapter in my life. Would they embrace me, or would they cast me aside as a heretic? The stakes felt monumental, but the fire ignited within me spurred me onward into the unknown, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. As I engaged in my prayers each day, a creeping sense of doubt began to envelop my heart. At first, it was a subtle feeling, almost imperceptible, but as the days wore on, it intensified into a gnawing disconnection from the very beliefs that had once anchored my life. I would kneel with fervor, reciting the familiar words, but the truth behind them felt diluted, as if I were speaking a language that no longer resonated within me. Each plea for guidance was met with silence, leaving me with an unsettling sense of abandonment. I started questioning everything. The foundation I had built my life upon felt unstable, and I couldn't ignore the voices within that urged me to seek something beyond mere ritual. My nights became troubled, haunted by dreams that unsettled my already fragile spirit. I would find myself wandering in darkness, lost in a maze of uncertainty. In one particularly vivid dream, I stood before a crowd, my voice trembling as I attempted to speak the truth I felt slipping away. Yet the faces around me reflected disappointment, anger, and confusion. They represented not just my family and friends, but the entire community I had grown up in. People who had nurtured me, but who also held the power to reject me. These dreams left me grasping for answers, seeking comfort in a faith that felt increasingly like a cage rather than a sanctuary. In those moments of internal strife, I began to wonder if my religion was being used as a means of control rather than a pathway to truth. The teachings I'd embraced since childhood were intended to guide me closer to God, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that some people leveraged spirituality for their personal gain. I started seeing patterns in the world around me, how those in power manipulated beliefs to maintain control over the masses. The revelation was jarring, awakening a sense of urgency in me that I could no longer ignore. Was I to remain oblivious to a hidden agenda that sought to divide us through fear and obedience? As I delved deeper into my doubts, I found myself yearning for answers that transcended tradition. It was as if a curtain had been drawn back, revealing truths I had been shielded from for far too long. In the quiet of my thoughts, I began to embrace the possibility that my experiences, my illness, my dreams, and even my moments of doubt were part of a larger spiritual war playing out in my life. I could feel the weight of this realization pressing down on me, igniting a fire within my spirit that demanded I confront these truths. Each day felt like a battle, and I knew I needed to fight for my soul, to awaken from the slumber that had kept me complacent for so long. Every day, the tension grew. I was no longer simply engaging in a ritual. I was on a quest for truth, I longed for an encounter with something divine that could cut through the noise of doubt and reveal the way forward. My heart ached for clarity as I sensed the presence of something greater awaiting my awakening. It was time to confront the deeper, suppressed questions haunting my spirit. I needed to know if I could find solace beyond the constraints of my upbringing and what the repercussions of such a journey might be. Little did I know, the answers I sought would soon propel me into an experience that would change everything, not just for me, but potentially for others locked in similar struggles, waiting for their own awakening from the darkness. The pivotal moment came unexpectedly, shattering the fragile peace I had been clinging to. I was involved in a severe accident, one that left me spiraling into a darkness so profound, it felt like I was being drawn into an endless void. I remember the deafening silence, the coldness that enveloped me, and a sense of detachment from my body, as if I were floating outside of myself. Time ceased to exist. It was just me suspended in an eerie stillness, and in that vast expanse, I grappled with confusion and fear. I could feel the weight of my life, the struggles, the doubts, the cancer that had invaded my body, crushing down on me like an anchor pulling me deeper into despair. But then, a brilliant light burst through the darkness, cutting through the veil as if it were crafted from a divine essence. I was drawn toward it, instinctively knowing that something sacred awaited me. As I moved closer, I heard a voice, gentle yet powerful, calling my name. Amina. It resonated through my being, igniting something deep within me. In that radiant presence stood Jesus, his aura radiating love and compassion that felt like a warm embrace on a cold night. In that moment, every fear and doubt evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and belonging that I had long sought. As I stood before him, the truths of my life unfolded like a tapestry. Jesus revealed to me the hidden agendas woven into the fabric of society, exposing the elite's manipulation that kept so many in shackles. I saw visions of a spiritual war playing out in the lives of everyday people, brothers and sisters pitted against one another in conflict, all while the powers that be thrived on this division. The revelation struck home. I understood that deception is a chain that binds us, and that the struggle I faced was not mine alone, but a universal battle against forces hell-bent on maintaining control over our hearts and minds. Each vision was sharper than the last, unveiling the manipulation that had masqueraded as tradition and faith in my life. I recognized the impact that sustained beliefs could have on my spirit, holding me captive in a cycle of obedience while the truth lay just beyond my reach. The awakening ignited a fire in my heart, a call to arms in the name of love, compassion, and the ultimate pursuit of truth. It became clear to me that I was meant to break free from the shackles of fear and expose the truth hiding in plain sight. With each whisper of understanding from Jesus, I felt the weight of my past and the illness that had plagued me lifting. I was being called not just to healing, but to a mission of awakening others, sharing the truths I had been shown. As the light began to dim, I felt the tug back to my physical body, a gentle yet firm pull, guiding me back to a world that seemed simultaneously foreign and familiar. I awoke in a hospital room, gasping for breath, the sterile smell grounding me in reality. Every fiber of my being buzzed with the urgency to act on the revelations I had received. I was different now, reborn in a way that transcended mere physical healing. I had glimpsed the truth amidst the chaos of existence, and I could feel the fire of purpose igniting within me, urging me to rise against the tides of deception and manipulation. I was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, empowered by Jesus' love and the truth I could no longer deny. Upon awakening from my coma, I was filled with a mix of relief and confusion. I had survived, but everything surrounding me felt foreign, as if I had entered a new realm. The moment I saw the faces of my family, however, that relief quickly faded into dread. The expressions on their faces told me everything. Disappointment, anger, and betrayal flickered in their eyes. "Heretic," they whispered, their words cutting through me like daggers. The weight of their judgment hung in the air, and I could feel their rejection enveloping me. I had dared to step outside the bounds of my upbringing, and the consequences were stark. Overwhelmed by loneliness, I grappled with the overwhelming guilt of having broken away from the faith that had defined me for so long. I could almost hear the echoes of my childhood teachings. The values instilled in me became suffocating as I tried to reconcile my transformative experience with the harsh judgments of those I loved. Each time I tried to reach out to explain my encounter with Jesus, words failed me. How could I articulate a revelation that had filled me with such profound love and understanding? Instead, I was met with suspicion, as if my newfound beliefs had misguided me rather than awakened me. The deep silence that pervaded my home felt heavy, suffocating. I missed the warmth of connection and the bonds that once seemed unbreakable. Each meal shared became a painful reminder of the rift separating me from my family. I found myself withdrawing into solitude, contemplating the pain of their disapproval while longing for their acceptance. I could feel my heart aching for the comfort of familiarity, even as I knew that familiarity had kept me shackled in a system rooted in fear and control. The deception that ensnared my community began to unravel in my mind, yet I remained caught between two worlds, one that offered a liberating truth and another steeped in tradition. In those quiet moments, I also felt the call of my awakening tugging at me, compelling me to act. I had witnessed the hidden agenda that threatened the very fabric of humanity. The elite manipulated beliefs, fueling division and conflict, maintaining control over the masses. The urgency to speak about the spiritual war raging beneath the surface of our lives intensified. I realized that my experience was not just for me, it was meant to inspire others, still trapped in the darkness of deception. But the fear of how my family would respond loomed large, constraining me, as I weighed the risk of alienation against the responsibility to share the truth I had discovered. Days turned into weeks, and I began to understand that the loneliness I felt was not just a reflection of my separation from family, but also a part of the spiritual war I was called to engage in. I couldn't turn back. The light of Jesus had illuminated a path forward, one filled with hope and urgency. I had to summon the courage to step into that path, to speak my truth despite the potential backlash. The battle within me raged fiercely. One part yearned for reconciliation, while another pushed me toward my mission of awakening. Each new day brought its struggles, but it also brought new opportunities to embrace my calling, to advocate for those suffering under the burdens of fear and manipulation. I knew I had to share my story, come what may, and help others find their own awakening in the face of such overwhelming darkness. Driven by an insatiable quest for truth, I found myself venturing into uncharted territory. The revelations I had received during my near-death experience pulled me towards Christianity, with a force I couldn't ignore. In the dark of my room, where I once fervently prayed, I now sought solace in the pages of the Bible. The first time I opened it, the weight of my past felt palpable. Yet as I began to read, I was struck by how alive the words felt. Each verse spoke directly to my soul, resonating with the profound truth I had encountered. It was as if I'd finally uncovered secrets that had long been hidden from me. I often spent sleepless nights, listening to testimonies of others who, like me, had experienced spiritual awakenings. Each story painted a vivid portrait of transformation, igniting a fire within me that yearned for more. I marveled at how these individuals had found their way to Jesus, discovering love and purpose amidst the chaos of life. Their journeys mirrored my own in ways that brought both comfort and urgency. I realized I wasn't alone in this quest. I was part of a larger movement seeking awakening and freedom from the deceptions that had ensnared so many. But with each revelation came the shadow of fear. I was acutely aware that I was treading on dangerous ground. As a Muslim woman in a traditional family, the stakes were incredibly high. I could lose everything: my family, my community, my cultural ties. The thought of being cast out, labeled a heretic, haunted me. I could almost hear the voices of my family echoing in my mind, expressing their disappointment and anger at this perceived betrayal. Yet the urgency of my awakening urged me forward, creating a conflict I could feel deep within my core. How could I reconcile this newfound truth with the deep love I had for my family and culture? Sometimes, I would toss and turn at night, grappling with my conflicting emotions. The baita comfort I found in my new faith was offset by the cold fear of rejection that loomed over me. There were nights I doubted whether I had the strength to follow this path. But as I continued to read and listen, I found a sense of empowerment growing within me. I couldn't simply turn my back on the truth I had discovered, no matter how daunting the consequences might be. I began to grasp the essence of the spiritual war at play, not just within my own heart, but in the world around me. The manipulation of the elite and the hidden agendas that sought to divide humanity began to crystallize in my understanding. As I embraced this journey, I felt a deeper calling to share my experiences with those who might be struggling in silence. I envisioned a future where others could find the same awakening I had experienced, liberated from the chains of fear and deception. But how could I make such a profound impact when I felt so small against the enormity of the requirements ahead? I realized that the courage I sought had to come from within, and the urgency of this mission ignited a passion in me that I couldn't ignore. The responsibility weighed heavily on my heart, yet there was a glimmer of hope. The possibility that by sharing the truth, I could help guide others toward their own moments of awakening, just as I had been guided towards the light of Jesus. As I began to unwrap the layers of my experience, it became increasingly clear that what had happened to me served a greater purpose. My near-death experience wasn't just about my own transformation. It was about stepping into a divine calling that had been waiting for me all along. I felt a surge of conviction rising within me, urging me to break the silence that had long defined my life. The oppressive system that had kept me shackled was rooted in a web of deception, a hidden agenda that sought to control not only my faith, but also the very essence of who I was. I realized that I could no longer shrink back. Every revelation I received during my encounter with Jesus illuminated the shadows of misunderstanding that had clouded my existence. I understood that voicing my truth could act as a catalyst for others trapped in this spiritual war. The thought of speaking out filled me with both hope and fear. What if my family turned their backs on me? What if I was met with hostility instead of understanding? It was a risk I had to weigh against the urgency of the mission laid before me. Lives were at stake, including my own, in this ongoing battle against the forces that thrive on division and ignorance. I envisioned a world where those around me could finally recognize the shackles binding them, the division created by those in power, the elite who thrived on manipulation. My heart ached for my community, suffering in silence under a regime of fear and compliance. I knew the stories of others who had suffered in the same way I had. They needed to break free from the oppressive grip of tradition dictated by fear. My own experience had transformed me into a warrior of truth, and I felt compelled to lead others toward their own awakenings, to show them that there was hope beyond their pain. As I took that first step to share my truth, I felt a ripple of anxiety course through me, but a profound sense of determination overshadowed it. I began to reach out to those I felt might be ready to listen, sharing not just my story, but the revelations I had been granted. I spoke about the hidden agenda I'd uncovered and the spiritual war that raged not only within us, but in the world at large. Each interaction fueled my resolve. I saw the flicker of recognition in others' eyes as they heard my words. They too had felt the weight of oppression, the subtle manipulation of their beliefs, and it ignited a spark of awakening that I could feel in the air around us. Every testimony I shared was a step further into embracing my calling. I faced pushback and resistance, yet I also found allies willing to stand shoulder to shoulder in this fight for truth. Together, we began to forge a path toward liberation, a community emerging from the depths of despair. As our collective stories intertwined, the urgency of our mission grew clearer. We were in the midst of a spiritual war, a battle for the hearts and minds of those still trapped by deception. I reflected on how powerful our shared voices could be and how they might inspire others to join the fight for their spiritual freedom. Though the risks were tangible, the importance of our mission fueled the fire within me, and I knew it was time to fully embrace my purpose and stand unwavering in the light of truth. The moment I made the decision to leave my village felt like stepping off a precipice into the unknown. It wasn't just about adopting a new name. It was about reclaiming my identity and stepping into a future shaped by my rebirth in Christ. I remember packing my few belongings in silence, knowing that each item I placed in my bag represented a piece of the life I was leaving behind. The memories of my family, the traditions that once defined me, they all echoed in my mind as I took the final look at the home that had been the backdrop of my struggles, joys, and ultimate awakening. Leaving felt like a sacred act, both painful and liberating. It was time to embrace the truth I had uncovered and step into the light. As I embarked on this journey, I felt the weight of both loss and promise. I had shed my old life, and with it, I carried the wounds of separation and the hope of a new beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but I had a fire ignited within me that fueled my determination. My encounter with Jesus had opened my eyes to a world of possibility where love and freedom were accessible to all who sought them. I couldn't ignore the spiritual war that was waging around us, nor could I sit idly by as others remained trapped in deception. I was filled with the conviction that sharing my story could inspire others to break free as I had. I began to evangelize and assist those who were also searching for their truth. I reached out to those around me, sharing the revelations I had received and the love of Jesus that transformed my heart. Each conversation became an opportunity to shed light on the hidden agenda of the elite who thrived on division and control. I felt a calling to expose the deception that surrounded us, leading so many sincere souls astray. The urge to share this truth became a driving force in my life, one that eclipsed my fears of rejection and judgment. Amidst the pain and struggles, I found profound meaning in my journey. I witnessed the transformation in others as they embraced their own awakenings, breaking free from the chains of fear. The joy I felt seeing them step into their truth eclipsed any lingering regret over my own sacrifices. Together, we formed a supportive community, standing shoulder to shoulder against the tides of oppression that sought to silence our collective voice. I understood now that every trial I faced had prepared me for this moment, to be an instrument of change and hope in a world desperate for both. As I continued to move forward, I remained aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Each day brought new battles, not just for myself, but for others who were still searching for their path. I felt the subtle temptation to retreat back into the shadows of my old life, especially when faced with harsh criticism or doubt. Yet deep within me, the truth of what Jesus had revealed sustained my spirit. The path of awakening was never promised to be easy. Still, my resolve strengthened, knowing that every step taken in faith could bring someone else closer to freedom and love. I was willing to face the uncertainty of the future, for the light that had ignited my existence now guided my every action. and I was committed to sharing that light with the world around me. Now that you've journeyed with me through my story, I must leave you with this thought. Have you ever felt the edges of your faith begin to fray, as if the very fabric of what you believed was unraveling before your eyes? What if the shadows lurking in the corners of your life are not mere fears, but invitations into a greater truth waiting to be revealed? I encountered Jesus in my darkest hour, and what I discovered reshaped the core of my existence. It was not just about personal healing. It illuminated an urgent, spiritual battle raging all around us, a struggle for hearts and minds, manipulated by an elite few who thrive on division, fear, and control. We are all interconnected in this war, and I realized my awakening isn't solely my own. It's an invitation to awaken others. It's a call to break the chains of deception and step into a reality filled with love and unity. So now, I turn to you. Have you ever experienced a moment that shattered your understanding of reality? Have you felt that gentle nudge, urging you to rise above the darkness surrounding you? I want to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Together, let's explore the truths that have the power to set us free. And if my story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit the notification bell. The journey ahead promises even more revelations that could transform the way you see the world and perhaps yourself. You deserve to be part of this incredible exploration of truth. In our next video, we'll dive into another remarkable testimony of someone who found their way to the light after experiencing profound sorrow and loss. I'm Hamza, and I thank you for sharing this moment with me. Remember, in pursuit of truth, you are never alone. The light beckons you to join the fight against the darkness. Until next time, take care.